What if I told you that the most dangerous war America could stumble into right now is not one that can be won with missiles, airstrikes, or shock and awe headlines? What if the real danger isn't Iran's weakness, but its desperation? Tonight, we are diving into a story that sits at the edge of history, a story of protests, power, pride, and a president who says he wants to win, but maybe walking into a trap with no clean exit. Donald Trump, Iran on the brink, and a Middle East that could explode, not in days, but in hours. Stay with me till the end, because what happens next could reshape global politics, oil prices, American elections, and millions of lives. Over the past 2 weeks, Iran has been rocked by massive anti-government protests. Thousands are reportedly dead, thousands more arrested. The internet inside Iran has gone dark. And from Washington, Donald Trump has issued one of his strongest warnings yet. If Iran violently kills peaceful protesters, Trump wrote, the United States of America will come to their rescue. We are locked and loaded. That single line sent shockwaves across the world. Because this time, analysts say there is no easy win, no quick strike, no clean victory banner. Instead, there's a real risk of a long, messy, catastrophic conflict, one that could spiral far beyond Iran and America. To understand why this moment is so dangerous, we need to rewind, not just weeks, but decades. Iran's current government was born out of the 1979 Islamic Revolution. Since then, it has survived everything. A brutal 8-year war with Iraq, crushing U.S. sanctions, assassinations, economic collapse, multiple waves of protests. Every time, analysts predicted the end. Every time, the system survived. But today, something feels different. Iran is weaker than it has ever been, economically, militarily, and diplomatically. Its currency has collapsed, losing over 90% of its value. Its regional allies, Hamas, Hezbollah, Syria, are either crippled or gone. Its air defenses were neutralized last year. Its nuclear program was badly damaged by U.S. strikes. And now, its own people are on the streets. This isn't just unrest. This is an existential crisis. Let's break down how we got here. Early January 2026, protests erupt across Iran. What begins as anger over economic hardship quickly turns into nationwide anti-government demonstrations. January 2nd, Donald Trump issues a dramatic warning on social media, threatening U.S. military intervention if protesters are killed. Mid-January, Iranian security forces launch a brutal crackdown. Activist groups report death tolls in the thousands. Iran responds by imposing a total internet blackout, cutting the country off from the outside world. January 14th. Funerals are held for security forces killed during the unrest. Images of coffins wrapped in Iranian flags spread across state media. January 15th to 16th. Trump appears to soften his tone, repeating Iran's claim that demonstrators were armed. He says Iranian officials promised there would be no mass executions. January 17th. Trump publicly praises Iran for allegedly halting hundreds of planned executions, while U.S. media reports the Pentagon is quietly moving military assets, including an aircraft carrier strike group, closer to the Middle East. And that's where we are now. A pause, not peace. A pause before the next move. At the center of this storm is Donald Trump, a president who has built his image on decisive, dramatic action. He points to past operations as proof of strength: the killing of ISIS leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, the assassination of Iranian General Qasem Soleimani, the bombing of Iran's nuclear facilities, even the recent abduction of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. But Iran is not Venezuela, and experts keep repeating that line for a reason. On the Iranian side stands Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei and a system that believes its survival is at stake. Then there are the analysts, voices warning that every option on the table is bad. Barbara Slavin, from the Stimson Center, puts it bluntly: all the options are pretty terrible. And that sentence may be the most honest summary of this crisis. You might be asking, why should I care? Here's why. A U.S.-Iran conflict wouldn't stay in Iran. It wouldn't stay in the Middle East. Oil prices could skyrocket overnight. Global inflation could surge. Shipping routes could be disrupted. American troops across the region could become targets. And politically, this crisis could define Trump's presidency or destroy it. One analyst put it chillingly: Iran doesn't need to win the war. It just needs to make sure Trump loses his. Inside Iran, the mood is volatile. The protests may appear to be fading, but experts warn this is temporary. Without internet access, no one can truly verify what's happening on the ground. Demonstrations could reignite at any moment. In Washington, opinions are split. Warhawks argue this is a historic opportunity to finally dismantle the Iranian system. Senator Lindsey Graham has openly pushed for regime change, but America's Gulf allies are nervous. They fear regional chaos more than Iranian survival. And at home, Trump faces a different challenge: voters. Many in his America First base are deeply skeptical of another Middle East war. After Iraq, after Afghanistan, the appetite for intervention is thin. Polls already show discomfort with recent military actions abroad. Hidden angles and lesser-known facts. Here's a critical detail most headlines miss. Only 2 months ago, the Trump administration released a national security strategy calling for reduced U.S. involvement in the Middle East. It emphasized non-intervention, peaceful relations, no forced social change. But now, Trump's own rhetoric may have cornered him. By framing the Iran crisis as a moral obligation, rescuing protesters, he risks becoming exactly what he once criticized: a humanitarian interventionist. Another hidden angle? Iran's strategy. Experts believe Tehran may retaliate in ways designed not to win militarily, but to cause economic and political pain. Oil markets, regional proxies, prolonged instability, slow pressure, not sudden shock. What could happen next? Future impact. So where does this go? There are 3 possible paths. First, a diplomatic deal. Unlikely, but not impossible. Iran could offer concessions on its nuclear program in exchange for sanctions relief. Trump could declare victory. Second, a limited U.S. strike, meant to send a message. But limited strikes rarely stay limited. Third, and most dangerous, a cycle of action and retaliation. U.S. strike. Iran responds. U.S. escalates. The conflict expands. Once that spiral begins, no one controls it. And that's the nightmare scenario analysts fear most. History teaches us something uncomfortable. The most devastating wars don't begin with certainty. They begin with miscalculation, with pride, with leaders believing the other side will blink first. Donald Trump says he wants to win in Iran. But as one expert warned, this isn't a game you can win in a single move. Iran is wounded, cornered, and when nations feel they have nothing left to lose, they become the most dangerous of all. The world is holding its breath, because the next decision made in Washington or Tehran may not just decide a presidency. It may decide the future of an entire region, and maybe far more than that. And if you think this crisis ends with one statement, one threat, or one aircraft carrier moving closer to the Gulf, think again. Because what we're seeing right now is not an ending. It's an intermission, a dangerous pause where every silence is louder than words. So let's continue this story and dig even deeper into what most people are not talking about. One of the most underestimated aspects of this crisis is that this is not just a military confrontation. It's psychological warfare on multiple levels. Donald Trump knows the power of words. He knows how markets react. He knows how governments panic. When he says, "We are locked and loaded," he isn't just talking to Tehran. He's talking to Iranian generals, protesters on the streets, U.S. voters back home, and even America's allies who are watching nervously from the sidelines. For Iran's leadership, these words aren't just threats. They are tests. Tests of credibility. Tests of resolve. And history shows us something important. When Iran believes a threat is real, it prepares not for survival, but for retaliation. Here's the paradox nobody likes to admit. Strong countries often show restraint. Weak, cornered regimes rarely do. Iran today is not confident. It is not stable. And that makes it unpredictable. Its economy is shattered. Its regional influence is collapsing. Its legitimacy at home is cracking. This is exactly the kind of situation where leaders stop thinking about long-term consequences and start thinking about immediate survival. Analysts warn that Iran may calculate that escalation is safer than submission. Why? Because backing down could inspire more protests, more defections, more collapse from within. In that sense, a confrontation with the United States becomes a grim tool, a way to redirect anger outward. Let's talk about the protests. Some reports suggest the demonstrations are slowing down. But experts caution strongly against that conclusion. Remember, Iran is under a near-total internet blackout. No live videos, no social media coordination, no real-time verification. Historically, Iranian protest movements don't disappear. They hibernate. They wait for the next spark. And that spark could be anything: a new execution, a U.S. airstrike, a single viral image that slips through censorship. If protests explode again, especially during or after a U.S. military action, Iran's leadership may see that as confirmation that the country is under siege from both inside and outside. That's when decisions become reckless. Behind the scenes, U.S. military planners are deeply uneasy because every scenario map looks bad. A decapitation strike targeting Iran's top leadership? Experts say it may not collapse the regime and could instead unify it. Airstrikes on military facilities? That invites retaliation against U.S. bases across the Middle East. A prolonged campaign? That means casualties, instability, and political backlash at home. Even the Pentagon understands this truth. Iran doesn't need to defeat the U.S. military. It just needs to make the war painful enough. And pain travels fast, through oil prices, global markets, and election cycles. Let's be very clear about something. The moment missiles fly, the global economy feels it. Iran sits near one of the most critical energy corridors on Earth. Any threat to shipping routes, even perceived, can spike oil prices instantly. Higher oil prices mean higher fuel costs, higher food prices, higher inflation, not just in the Middle East, in Europe, in Asia, and yes, in the United States. Analysts say Iran understands this leverage extremely well. A few strategic disruptions could do more damage politically than a battlefield loss ever could. Now let's turn back to Donald Trump. He is facing one of the most complex balancing acts of his career. On one hand, he has projected strength, promising protection to Iranian protesters and threatening military action. On the other hand, he has repeatedly campaigned on ending forever wars. His base is divided. Some see Iran as unfinished business. Others see another disaster waiting to happen. And looming over all of this are the 2026 midterm elections. A sudden spike in inflation, American casualties overseas, a prolonged conflict with no clear victory. Any of these could dramatically reshape the political landscape. This is why some analysts believe Trump may ultimately look for a symbolic win, something he can sell as decisive without triggering full-scale war. But symbolic actions have consequences too. Is diplomacy still possible? Technically, yes. Practically, barely. The U.S. demands are sweeping. No uranium enrichment. Surrender of enriched material. Limits on missiles. Interregional proxies. From Tehran's perspective, that looks less like negotiation and more like surrender. Iranian officials insist they have already halted enrichment and maintain their right to self-defense. Unless one side dramatically recalibrates expectations, talks could collapse before they even begin. And once diplomacy fails publicly, leaders often feel pressure to prove strength through action. One of the most frightening possibilities is this: a war that no one actually intended. A missile fired by mistake. A drone shot down. A misunderstanding at sea. In a region crowded with forces, bases, and militias, accidents are not rare. And when tensions are this high, accidents don't stay accidents. They become excuses. Israel is watching closely. So are Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and other Gulf states. They may fear Iran, but they fear chaos even more. An unstable Iran could mean refugee flows, militant resurgence, economic shock. That's why many U.S. allies are quietly urging restraint, even as public statements remain cautious. No one wants to be the next domino. If history teaches us anything, it's this: major conflicts often begin when leaders underestimate how the other side defines victory. Trump defines victory in terms of dominance, deterrence, and optics. Iran defines victory as survival, even if the cost is enormous. Those definitions don't align. And when goals don't align, wars drag on. Right now, the world is standing in a narrow corridor between diplomacy and disaster. Every speech, every military movement, every tweet, they all matter. Because once the first irreversible step is taken, there is no rewind button. Iran is wounded. America is powerful. And history shows that this combination has never produced a clean outcome. So the real question is not, can the United States defeat Iran? The real question is, at what cost? And to whom? To the region, to the global economy, to American politics, to ordinary people who will never sit at the negotiation table. This story is still unfolding, and the next chapter could be written by a single decision made behind closed doors. Until then, the world waits, watching, listening, and hoping that this pause does not turn into something far worse.